Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. This time I'm joined by cellist Jennifer Kloetzel, whose album Beethoven the Conquering Hero is out now. This album features the complete works of Beethoven for cello and piano, and you can hear this is absolutely stunning. We're opening now with the first of 12 variations for cello and piano based on See the Conquering Hero Comes from Handel's Judas Maccabeus. And in fact, I'm going to finish with the final variation because this is the first track on the album and it's just beautiful. I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Jennifer. Welcome to Harmonious World. It's a pleasure to have you. And I can see behind you, Jennifer, the marvellous Mr. Beethoven himself.
That's right. I am so obsessed with Beethoven that I own a life-size cardboard cutout of him, and he watches me practice every day. So that's just part. I mean, it's silly fun, but it still gives me an idea of him around me at all times. So
right. So tell me about this album, Beethoven the Conquering Hero. So you have literally taken the great man's complete works for cello and piano and committed them to recording.
That's right. It's been a long time project. It's something I've dreamed of doing for years and years. And when I first sat down to actually plan the project, the first thing I had to decide was how much music to put on this set of CDs or this recording, because it's a lot of music and people debate about what is included here. Everyone knows there are the 5 cello sonatas or they're actually marked as sonatas for piano and cello. And those kind of go throughout Beethoven's lifetime from the early to the late period. And then there are 3 sets of variations. So I knew I would include those. And then there were sets of pieces that that are arranged for cello and piano. So there's the great Kreutzer sonata, the violin sonata. There's an arrangement for cello and piano, but Beethoven himself didn't do that. His student Czerny did that. So I decided to leave that by the wayside. And there's a version of the Opus 3 string trio as well. It's this wonderfully long piece, but I prefer that in string trio form myself. And again, it wasn't Beethoven. But the extra work that I included on this set was the horn sonata, the Opus 17 horn sonata, because actually Beethoven himself wrote the cello part when he sent it to the publisher. So I thought that was a nice thing to add in.
Yes, and that is a lovely piece. And I guess I don't think I've ever heard it. I don't think I've heard a recording of it for sure.
Right. No, I think there aren't many who include that, and it's very different than the other works. But I think it fits nicely into. I have that one. It's actually on disc 2. If you actually are sitting in front of the 3 discs, so 'cause it's almost 3 hours of music. So that second disc includes the 2 Mozart Magic Flute variations that Beethoven did, and then the horn sonata fits right between those in timing. So I actually released them from chronologically in the whole set because I wanted, if a listener was interested and had 3 hours to spend, for them to sit down and watch the development of this composer from beginning to end. So.
Yes, and it is a marvelous collection, and I do love the fact that they're sort of in time order, because you can see a change and you can see a development, definitely.
Yes, you can. So many people go straight ahead to the Opus 69, the famous A major sonata, which is sort of, we call it the cellist's proving ground, right? It was the first sonata that really is considered equal partnership between cello and piano. But I think that all the elements you find there, so that's from 1808, that's Beethoven's heroic period. All the elements there are, you can hear them in his music beforehand, but he's still trying to figure out the balance between the cello and the piano. All the earlier works, that entire first disc, for example, the first 2 sonatas and the first 2 sets of variations were written with Beethoven was playing the piano part himself. So he was, showing off and trying things out. And then later he's, losing his hearing and he's thinking more about the balance between the instruments, I think. So, and then the last 2 works on this collection are from 1815. So that's really when he's turning to his late period. And everything's a little more concise, more condensed. There aren't as many transitions. There are more surprises. It's a little more angular often, but he's constantly experimenting. It's part of what I love about this collection, right?
Yes, indeed. And I was talking to somebody actually about this collection just yesterday, and I was saying it's how fascinating it is that this is a man whose hearing was going or gone,
Hmm.
certainly in the later pieces, and
Right.
and yet he manages to compose such beautiful music.
Indeed, he does. It's one of the things that I think makes me even more feel more close to Beethoven is that I watch, you watch, I've watched, we all watch him struggle throughout his life and how hard he worked on all the pieces, and how he wrote and rewrote. But it was almost like he was playing, if you had to be blindfolded and play chess matches, and he could figure it all out. He knew what it was supposed to sound like, but some people say that probably because he wasn't hearing all the time, he was just hearing in his head, he could really tap into his imagination even more because he wasn't bound by what he was hearing in front of him. He was
Right.
just dreaming of what could be possible, and I think that's magical.
Yes, indeed. And it really is. And this is a lovely collection, really, really
Thank you.
lovely collection. So tell me about your training as a cellist. When did you start
Mhm.
learning the cello, and
Mhm.
how have you got on? You've had a very illustrious journey, haven't you?
Well, thank you. Let's see. So I first heard a cello when I was 5 years old, but my parents said, "You're too young." I wanted to play it. I said, "That's the one I want to play." They said, "No, you're too young, and it's too big, and you should wait." And I begged for an entire year, and finally, at age 6, I was allowed. They rented a half-size cello, and I was allowed to begin study, and I learned fast. So my first teacher said, take her to the local conservatory because she worries me. She's learning too fast, and I'm convinced I'm going to teach her something wrong. So that was Peabody Conservatory in Baltimore. So I was in the preparatory department there for 10 years or so. And then I went to Juilliard for my bachelor's degree and got a Fulbright grant to come and study in London with William Pleath. So that was a really interesting and wonderful part of my life. And then I was trying to figure out what to do next. I knew that I wanted to play a lot of chamber music, a lot of solo work, and I was freelancing for a little while in the Baltimore, D.C. area. Went back to Juilliard for another degree, a master's degree, and then moved to San Francisco to be the founding cellist of the Cypress String Quartet for 20 years. So I was still doing a little solo playing on the side, but that was the focus of my life for 20 years. And in 2016, we disbanded, and then I began to go back and look at all the music that I couldn't spend time in during that time. But with my time with Cypress, we recorded all of the Beethoven string quartets. So my obsession was being fueled and filled during that time because we were rehearsing, recording, performing, talking about Beethoven all the time as well. So.
Yeah. And I think there's something about him. And actually, the person I was talking to him about was and about this recording was a rock musician. I mean, a
Mhm.
guitarist who, but he completely understands the discipline.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there's something about, we were having this discussion about Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, about
Mhm.
their precision, their attention to
Mhm.
detail, their
Yes.
knowledge of their skill and their art, and the
Mhm.
creativity that is really quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Mhm. I think back. I read a quote at one point about Beethoven, and of course, it's translated into English, so I don't know how exact it is. But Beethoven said something about how art demands of us that we never stand still, and it's one of the things. Whereas you can recognize Beethoven's music, he's always trying new things. He's always doing something different. Throughout the course of this, you can see there's nothing that's alike in this collection of 9 works. And I love that about him. And then also the way, if you look, I've spent a long time studying his notebooks and reading about him and how hard he worked on. This weekend I'm performing the Ghost Trio, and knowing that he wrote 5 alternate endings for the slow movement of that piece because he was trying to figure out the right one. And I love that idea. And I love what he actually chose for that too. But there's endless cleverness, and it's such a wide range of emotion. So many people, if they don't know Beethoven that well, think of him only as that dramatic composer, always, sort of serious and in a minor key. But there is charm, charm and cuteness. There's a set of a type of music that he writes that I like to call clock music, because it's almost like little gears of a Swiss clock being put together where all the little pieces fit together perfectly. He does that brilliantly. There's dramatic and rageful music, of course, but and then they're bumped right up against each other, so it leaves you always surprised and generally delighted, I think. So even on a hundredth, time of playing something, I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. That's the richness of Beethoven.
Yes, and it's a shame that his anniversary in 2020 really got swept under the carpet, under the COVID carpet, really.
That's true. It was actually, this collection was meant to be released shortly after that, and of course we were delayed because the recording studio was closed, so we couldn't complete our project. And I like to say that Beethoven wouldn't mind that we're celebrating 251.
No, absolutely. The fact that he is still remembered and still performed, I suspect even he would be pleased and surprised at
Mhm.
that. And I think that longevity of music is like longevity of art, and and
Mhm.
and literature. Those things that persist, and that Shakespeare has always been performed.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
always some of the plays have slipped out of
Right.
favor sometimes, but there is always Shakespeare in every language at some point, all the time.
Mhm.
So, which is wonderful,
That's
and I think it's
true. Yeah. Actually, and it's interesting that if you think about masterpieces, that
yes.
they continue to have life. And sometimes people will say, well, we have so many recordings of this. Why would you, why do you want to make one? And I say, well, I'm looking at it with the eyes of today. Um, and I've spent my entire life steeped in this. I mean, you wouldn't want to see just one King Lear your entire
No,
life, or one.
exactly. That's
So
right.
so finding perspective from somebody else's point of view is interesting, I think. And I love comparing that. Much as I have beloved recordings of something, or beloved performances of a Shakespeare play, I love to see what people are trying next.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, indeed. So everybody I've asked this question because you have to, is how was your pandemic? How did it land for you?
It was hard because, of course, I love to play concerts, and I had an excellent season planned, and everything disappeared. So it was hard to just have everything come crashing down in that way. I'm a professor as well, so the teaching continued, although it was all over Zoom, which had its own challenges, but at least the students still improved. But I really miss, for me, performance and feeling that audience energy. Doing live streams is not the same. Actually having an audience in the concert hall with you, experiencing the music as you're playing it, is everything. That's, knowing that that's what I want to do with my life, and then having that taken away was a little bit brutal. But it also did give me time to study and plan some other projects, and play a lot of solo cello music. Um, and I commissioned a number of works during that time for solo cello. So, I actually, early on, it was just hard to figure out what to practice, because when you have no concerts, for the next year, you're saying, okay, well, what's going to keep me going right now? So I began with the Bach cello suites, of course, like so many cellists did, I'm sure. But I decided that I had to play at least one movement a day. And if nothing else, if I was having a hard day, if things were stressful or upsetting, or it was just, we weren't sure what was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
That as long as I played one movement of Bach, everything was fine. And I did that. That's 36 days of being sheltering in place right there, because there's six suites and six movements in each one. And I did them again and a third time, and I would try different things each time. And then it started, I started adding more things in, but that kind of kept me going. So concerts are
Yeah.
just starting to come back, and I'm thrilled with that. Yeah,
Well, that
and
was
I was
going to be
also,
my next, sorry,
yeah. No, go ahead.
that was going to be my next question. So, what concerts are you doing? What have you got
hmm
planned?
hmm This season has been a little slow still. There were a couple of things that were pushed forward into this year from that canceled season, but it's looking like next season will be, I'm hopeful anyway that they're coming back. I already have a lovely set of concertos and some recitals and things that are planned, and chamber music. So I do have one or two sets coming up now, but one was moved from January to February, and you just never know. We have to be very nimble these days, and prepared for anything, right? So,
Yeah.
but I'm delighted they're coming back. And I think, I had people saying to me, oh, well, the live concert's dead. It'll never come back now that we have all this live streaming abilities and everybody has microphones at their house. Nope, I think it's still that experience. There's something very special about being in a concert hall or whatever space where you're hearing a live performance. It's different.
Yes, and that interaction between performer and audience, you
Mhm.
don't get that across the screens at all.
It's true. I think it's become easier for people to watch things. We've become a good observers of seeing how something is presented, but it's not the same. I mean, and I've had that experience before too. If I've attended a concert or performed a concert, it felt a certain way, and then you hear the recorded version of that later. It's not the same.
No.
It never is. Yeah.
And I think the other thing is that quite often, if people are watching a streamed concert,
Hmm.
they're sitting at their computer, or they're sitting, even if they're on their sofa or whatever, but they're sitting. I guarantee you, they've got another device in their hand, and they're sort of checking out Facebook, or they're looking at whatever, or they're playing Wordle, or alongside it. And that's not, you can't do that in a concert hall. You cannot sit in a concert hall and go, yeah, that's nice, I'm enjoying that, but I'm going to carry on doing my playing my games or whatever.
Well, and I think there is something special about that. When you go to a concert hall, there aren't that many things that we do anymore where you sit and watch or listen and experience in that way. Movies, perhaps, if you go to the cinema, but it's even that's not quite the same. You're being entertained in a different way. The funny thing that I did find is with the live streams, I would have people. So often, I'd be playing for something and there would be just one camera and, a few microphones. And I had people say to me, well, but it only showed the one view. And I'm like, well, this is not Hollywood. We don't
Yeah,
have 16 cameras and cameramen working around, same as you would in a concert. I think with the live streams, people have become more demanding about what they expect from that. Anyway, but
yes,
and it was nice to at least have that. We could still release music, and a lot of people were contributing to that, of course. But at the same time, I think there's something special about, making the effort to buy a ticket and walk into the hall and sit down and give your attention to the person on stage, and for the person on stage to give to the audience. And that interaction is part of what makes it so special.
absolutely. So where is the best place for people to find out where you're performing and to buy your music?
Okay, well, I have a website. It's JK, my initials, Jennifer Kloetzel, jkcello.com. I'm also, of course, on the social medias. There's a Facebook page and Instagram um, as well. So
Yeah,
those are the best places to find me.
right. Okay. And where can they buy the music through your website, or
Mhm.
Bandcamp, or anywhere else?
Well, they can find actually this collection, the Beethoven, the Conquering Hero, is almost anywhere that, Apple Music, Spotify, you name it. It's all the streaming devices, and then it was released by Avi Records, so you can buy direct, which is very nice both for them and for me. Or almost anywhere else, Amazon, anywhere you find your music, it's pretty much everywhere. So and if you're still a person who listens on the compact discs, I recommend getting the collection because it comes with a wonderful booklet with photos and a lot of very interesting notes written by a Beethoven scholar about these works. So you get a nice education as you're listening. So I think that's fun too.
Yeah,
So
brilliant. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
thank you, thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and have a good evening, I should say.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. I will.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Jennifer. And now you can hear the ending of track 1 on this collection. And it's all about Beethoven, the Conquering Hero. I could have chosen any number of these tracks. This is one of my favourite albums of 2022. Please do check out the links in the show notes, and I look forward to welcoming you once more to Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.